Hi everyone, and thanks for joining us again today on now the second Q&A. As I said, I'll try and get as many of these done on a Wednesday as possible, so you can watch it Wednesday evening or Thursday morning for your cardio. Again, thanks for sending in your questions on my Instagram, Team LRF on the Instagram. And today we've got, again, 10 questions that I'll try and go through. What I'll do, same process, I'll read them out and then I'll go through each one individually. So first question is encouragement versus realistic feedback during prep. So meaning, how would I relay sort of if I don't think someone's going to do particularly well, or if I think they're going to do really well, how I think that means how would I portray that in a message or some feedback during prep. Off-season duration, and should you go into a calorie deficit at any point during your off-season. Bringing up weak body parts. Somebody has an overpowering upper body. Certain exercises you should not do during prep. Abdominal training, should it be weighted or unweighted? Favorite cheat meal. What is the purpose of a cheat meal? Carb up process. Sodium loading, depleting in peak week. And natural female limitations. So today's really good actually because we haven't got loads of PED questions. So that's quite nice because they get boring because it's the same questions all the time. How much should I take? What should I take? People are just looking for the one-off answer. So we've only got one PED question today, so that's really good. And the others, hopefully, you'll learn a little bit more about training and diet. So, okay, so encouragement versus realistic feedback during prep. As a coach, I'm very, very upfront and very, very honest. If I think a person could do very well, I'll tell them I think could do very well. If I know that someone else very good is competing in that show, I will say to them that someone else, I know someone else competing and they're also very good. As a pretty successful prep coach, as a regional show, I sort of do expect everybody to either make the top three at a regional show. But when you're going into the British finals, you then have to be a bit more realistic. And I'm completely upfront and I'm completely honest with people. And I'll set them targets. I'll say, I think you should make the top 10 this year. I think you should make the top 6 this year. I think you're going to break the top 3. And those targets are realistic. And they have to be realistic because if I start setting people unrealistic targets and say, right, I think you can make the top 3, and they don't even make the top 10, what sort of trust are they ever going to have in me? They're not going to have any trust in me at all. So I set them realistic targets. I always prep to win. Always prep to win, especially at regional qualifiers, because regional qualifiers are generally just about, as long as you carry enough muscle mass, which most guys and girls will do, otherwise they shouldn't be in the class, it's just about getting very, very lean. And we're very good at that as a prep team, to get people very, very lean. So that's probably why we have a lot of successes, is because we make people very, very lean and we make the process a little bit easier than what other people make it. But when we're going into the British finals, we always have to set a realistic target. So if somebody says to me, Rob, I think I'm going to make top 3 this year, and I really don't see it happening, then I have to just say, I think maybe you should draw back your expectations a little bit. It's your first year competing or your second year competing. Maybe these are more realistic expectations. And as I said, it's not any disrespect to the competitor. It's more of a respect to the competitor because I want them to be able to trust me. So when they do get last call out, for example, and they're going in thinking they're going to get first call out, that's incredibly disheartening. But if I say to them, listen, your goal is to make top 10 this year at the finals, and they make top 10, then it puts a little bit more trust and faith in me, and it shows I'm not bullshitting anyone. And there'd be no purpose bullshitting anyone because it just makes me look stupid. It makes me look like I'm not don't know what I'm talking about. So you have to be honest, you have to be realistic. Off-season duration, and should you go into a calorie deficit? Depends on your goals. If you are at the very top end of a weight class and you don't wish to leave that weight class, then I'd probably stay pretty much maintenance all year round during your off-season. So I'd say maintenance during your off-season. Say, for example, you're in the under 90 kilo class and you're at 89.9 shredded, then unless you're going to go up a weight class, then there's no need to add loads and loads of muscle. If your goal is to increase muscle mass and to step up a weight class, then stay in a calorie surplus for as long as possible. There'll be no need to go into a deficit. Some people go into a deficit if they get too fat, but again, it's very person dependent. Look at people like Lee Priest, Nasser El Sombati. These guys used to blow up in the off season, get massive, and then come right down and dial it in for their shows. But then other people like Dexter Jackson never really get too fat in the off season. So again, it's really, really person specific. If you can gain muscle and stay pretty lean, then stay in a surplus during the whole of the off season. But if you're not that person that can gain lean muscle mass and you have to pull it back every now and then so be it. Pull it back every now and then, go into a deficit, get some fat off you, and then go again. And it will also help with your prep that way. So if you're a person that does blow up, you've not got to lose 40, 50 pounds. Maybe you've only got to lose 20 or 30. But if you're that person I said that stays quite lean year round, can generally eat a lot of food and gain some good quality muscle, then I'd stay in a surplus in the whole of your off season. Bringing up weak body parts versus so overpowering upper body versus so she has an overpowering upper body. Let's get this right. Okay, so overpowering upper body compared to your legs. Okay, I've actually got a few clients that are completely the other way around. Very, very dominant quads and hamstrings and glutes, and not so dominant up top. And what we've done with that is we've just got them training legs once a week. So the way I would probably look to go about your training is doing something like lower, upper, lower, rest. So you're hitting your lower body as twice as often as you're hitting your upper body. So you're doing lower, upper, lower, rest. So you're doing 3 days on, 1 day off. And one of your lower body sessions would be predominantly hamstrings and glutes. The next upper body day, so your upper body day would be a full upper body day. So you'd be doing chest, back, shoulders, triceps, all in 1 day. Probably maybe 1 or 2 exercises on each body part, going to failure on those exercises. And then the next day would be your second lower body day, which would maybe be quad dominant day. So I say that again. I would go something like lower, upper, lower. Lower day 1 would be hamstring and glute dominant. Upper body would be full upper body. And then lower body 2 would be a quad dominant day. And that's how I would go about fixing a heavy upper body and not so strong lower body. And again, I'd probably reverse that if your legs are dominant. So more upper body work, less lower body work. You know, a couple of the girls that we have only train legs once a week, but they're training their upper body 5 times a week. So you can see sort of the difference there. So I'd go about increasing the frequency that you train your weak body part. So increasing the frequency means how often you train it, and probably reduce the volume in the sessions that you're doing. So if you're doing like 15 sets to failure, probably do 2 sets to failure, wrong. Probably do 10 sets to failure, but do that twice. So you're actually doing 20 sets to failure, but broken up over 2 sessions. So you're increasing the frequency, that means how often you train it, but reducing the volume, meaning how many sets you do in a workout. Certain exercises you shouldn't do during prep. None. I think this question would have been specifically related to something like deadlifts or squats and the myth that it's going to blow your waist out. Okay, it's not going to blow your waist out at all. You know, some of the best squatters have tiny, tiny waists. Some of the best deadlifters have tiny, tiny waists. If you have a blocky waist, then you'll always have a blocky waist. If you have a small waist, then generally you'll always have a small waist. The reason that bodybuilders these days are getting big guts is because of drug usage. It's not because of exercises. People have squatted for years, people have deadlifted for years, but guts have only maybe been around for like the last 10 years. You know, look at people like Lee Haney, look at people like Dorian Yates, look at people like, even going back to like Arnold, they all squatted, they all deadlifted, but none of them had massive blown out guts. The reason that the guys these days do have these massive guts is because of drug use, it's because of insulin use, it's because of growth hormone use, and this isn't use, this is abuse. So the reason that these guys do have these massive guts is because they're abusing certain substances, not because of the exercises that they're doing. So to answer your question, I don't avoid any exercises during prep unless you have an injury. If you have an injury or you're continuously getting injured doing an exercise, then pull it out. But there's nothing to stop you doing an exercise during prep because you think it's going to blow out your waist. That's ridiculous. Ab training, weighted or unweighted? I would do a mixture of both. Stimulate different muscle fibers. Maybe do your crunches weighted, do your hanging leg raises unweighted. But I would do a mixture of both. You know, abs are just like any other muscle. You have to vary your rep range. You have to vary your stimulus. So whether you're doing high volume, low volume, high reps, low reps, vary those reps, vary those stimulus. So I would do a mixture of both. Sorry, my camera's just, that's okay. The computer turned off, I don't know what happened. A favourite cheat meal? I like burger. I'm not a pizza person. I like burgers, or I like going to the Turkish restaurant. The Turkish restaurant is only like chicken, but it's because you don't have to cook it yourself, or you don't have to wash up the dishes. It tastes nice. But yeah, for me, it's either burger or it's a Turkish restaurant. And I like halloumi cheese, so I'd get something like halloumi cheese and maybe some frozen yogurt for dessert. The purpose of a cheat meal? I don't generally give that many cheat meals during prep. You can ask my clients. They don't often get cheat meals. If anything, they get refeeds. They might get one refeed a week. They might get one high calorie day a week. The purpose of a cheat meal is a lot more mental than physical. With a cheat meal, all you're doing is pushing in extra calories. So there's no difference from them calories coming from oats, jam, Cocoa Pops, or them coming from the burger, or them coming from chips. So the purpose of a cheat meal is just to give you a few extra calories, but mentally, the purpose of a cheat meal is to make you relax and make you feel like you're doing okay, make you sociable, etc., etc. But I don't give them often during prep. If I'm lucky, maybe if you do a 12-week prep, you might get 2, but you'll get a lot more refeed days and a lot more high calorie days. Because I believe they serve more of a purpose. You're able to control the foods a lot better. You're able to control the calories a lot better. You're able to control what somebody eats. I got food poisoning the other day from my cheat meal, and I actually went out and got a cheat meal rather than me have a refeed. Milos said go and have a cheat meal. I had a cheat meal and I got food poisoning from it. I was unable to control the calories I was putting in, and it's now resulted in me not being able to eat for 2 days. I'm unable to control the at cheat meal, generally you're unable to control the serving size. If you're going to get a plate of a burger and chips, you're going to eat all of that. But if I'm only giving you an extra 500 calories, we can make sure those 500 calories are coming from a certain substance, i.e. carbohydrates, i.e. fats. So I always believe in refeeds over cheat meals, or high calorie days over cheat meals. Carb up process. So this gentleman actually said to me, how would you load carbs in the last 2 days before a show, or something like that? Generally, that's not how I do my carb ups. So the way I would do my carb ups, so we've got a guy, actually a bodybuilder, competing on Sunday, and today is Wednesday. He started his carb up on Monday. So he started his carb up 2 days ago. And we have gradually introduced more carbs into his diet. I don't ever do zero carb. We've gradually introduced more and more carbs into his diet. And now today is Wednesday. He's on his highest day so far, but he'll probably go higher tomorrow. And the reason we do that is because when you do the sort of old school traditional carb up method of carving up 2 days before your show, there is so much room for error. So much room for error. Say, for example, your show's on a Sunday, like most shows are in the UK. You might do your first carb up day on Friday. So you carb up on Friday, you wake up on Saturday, you're still flat. This is now the day before your show. You think, well, I'm flat, I've got to eat more. You eat more and you spill over. You're now on the day of your show, spill over. You've got no room for error there. No room for error at all. The other thing that might happen, you carb up heavy on the Friday, you're starting to spill over. You pull your food back on the Saturday, one day before your show, you wake up on the Sunday and you're flat. Again, it's show day. You've got very, very little room to maneuver. So what we do is we carb up very early on in the week. We carb up maybe Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, reassess. So if we are spilling over, we've got Thursday, Friday, Saturday to bring that back. If we're flat, we've got Thursday, Friday, Saturday to fill you out. Saturday is always a very cautious day for me. So the day before the show is always very cautious. On that day before the show, you won't eat a lot, really. You won't eat what you've eaten on early on in the week in your carb up, because by Saturday, you should already be pretty full when you've carved up early on in the week. So all we're going to do here is just try and maintain that fullness and pull out the water from you. So what we will do is, if we carb load you Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you're looking great on Thursday. All we're trying to do here is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, just maintain that full look. As I said, rather than pile a load of carbs in at the end of your prep and potentially fuck up a 16-week prep because you've pushed loads and loads of carbs in and then you've spilt over. Or you haven't pushed enough carbs in, you haven't had enough time to reassess, and you're flat. If you do like to do that carb up method, so like the backloading method on your carb up, just be cautious. You'd rather be flat on stage than spilled over. Spilled over is a horrible look. Like if you actually see someone properly spilled over, it's a horrible, horrible look. They just look fat and bloated. If you see somebody who's a little bit flat, they still look quite hard and dry. So if you're going to do that backloading method and carb up a couple of days before your show, just be cautious. I'd err on the side of caution rather than extreme. Sodium in peak week. This is always, I never understand this question, okay? I never ever understand this question. So people think that sodium, well, people have a horrible idea of sodium. They think it's so bad. Salt is so bad. Sodium is so bad. It's going to make you spill over, blah, 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 blah. Generally, people will eat salt with all their meals, or the majority of them, just to give it a little bit of taste and flavour during prep. If you look great a week out from your show, which you should, okay, you shouldn't be relying on peak week. If you look great a week out from your show, using sodium in every meal, or 3 or 4 meals a day, why then would you take something out? It doesn't make any sense. Why then would you take that sodium out and then swap it with something like potassium, which most people do? It doesn't make any sense. So if you're loading salt and then deloading salt, the only thing it's going to make you do is look 50% worse. It could make you look 1% better, and I mean 1% better. But it could also make you look 50, 60, 70% worse. That ratio doesn't add up to me. So I would continue to use salt as you've used it during the whole of prep. None of my clients load salt. None of my clients take salt out. They just continue to use it as per what they've used it during prep. Nothing special is taken away here. You're not checking sodium levels on your blood. You're not checking potassium levels on your blood. You're not doing any of these things. You're not a doctor. You know, you're not going away taking blood tests and saying, right, here's my sodium level, here's my potassium level. I need to take in more sodium, I need to take out less potassium. You're not looking at it like that. You're guessing. Okay, you are 9 times out of 10 people that do that are guessing and they don't know what they're talking about. You look at the best prep coaches in the world, and I've had the privilege of speaking to a lot of those guys. They just keep it the same. There's no magic sodium loading. There's no magic potassium loading. There's no magic depletion. It's just kept the same the whole way through. And I can promise you that because I've spoke to these people and asked them their opinion on it. So sodium in peak week is just kept exactly the same. If you're salting 4 meals a day, continue to salt those 4 meals. If you're salting every meal, continue to salt every meal. Natural female limitations. Okay, so now we're on to the PED question. We're 18 minutes deep here. This will probably take a little bit longer than expected. Natural female limitations are, I would probably say, 90% of people are unlikely to turn pro without using an enhancement for females. And males as well. Probably 100% of males are not likely to turn pro without using any kind of enhancement. So we prep natural British champions in the figure and body fitness class who carry a hell of a lot of muscle. You generally get these 2 types of ideas, okay? You get this idea, one, if I take this substance, I'm going to get big, I'm going to get strong, and I'm going to become a champion. That is completely stupid, okay? It's completely stupid because you control a lot more than what you put in your body. And what you put in your body will not have as big as effect as those other things that you can control, i.e. your diet, i.e. your training, i.e. your work ethic, your adherence. If you can control your diet, your training, your work ethic and your adherence, you will see far better results than whether you give 80% of those and take a drug. If you can control those 100%, you will notice far better results than whether you do 80% and take a drug to rely on the extra 20. And that's what most people do. Most people will take something and they'll think, I can slack off my diet, I can slack off my training, I can slack off this, I can slack off that. That's really not the case. Okay, so I see it a lot. Okay, I see people start on the Stairmaster on prep, and then they move onto the treadmill, and then they move onto the bike. As prep gets harder, they move on to the easier things. They up their drugs because they think that's what's going to make up that extra percentage of work ethic that they lack. It's not. Okay, it's not at all. For females, these are the icing on the cake. That's all it is. Okay, for females, these anabolics or these fat burners or these thyroid medications are the icing on the cake. And 90% of females should not use enhancements, should not use them. The 10% of females that compete that use them or should use them are the people and the girls that have the chance of turning pro in the more muscular divisions. Body fitness and figure, women's physique. No bikini girl should be using any of these drugs at all, period. Only the bigger girls who have the potential to turn pro. As I said, we have natural British champions, the best people in this country, and they're natural. That's saying something there. That's saying how far your potential is without being a drug user. That's a really bad way of putting it, but without using PEDs. So you can become a natural British champion, be the best in the country at what you do, and not have to use PEDs. So that's probably the limitation, really. When you go onto the international circuits and stuff like that, then the girls are generally a lot harder than what they are in the UK. And what a lot harder means is just that their muscles pop against the skin a little bit better. They look leaner. They're drier. And they do carry a little bit more muscle. So when you want to then go to the international scene and start breaking into the top 3, maybe even winning, then that's possibly when you need to start taking that route or thinking about taking that route. And I never, ever, ever advise people to do that. I only advise them on a safe way once they've chosen that they're going to use or not. So I will never say to a person, you need to take this substance, because then that puts a huge emphasis on me and their health. Because if they have any health issues, then that comes down on me because I've pushed that substance onto somebody. I will only advise once that person has said, I want to do this and this is how I'm going to take my physique to the next level. Then I will advise. And then it's up to the person to follow that advice, because there are people out there that don't follow that advice. I say to them, take 10 milligrams of Anavar, and they take 20. Just because they think more is better. And that's happened before, and it will probably happen again. So in terms of the natural limitations, you should be winning regional shows, you should be winning national shows, you should be placing top 10 at international events. Those are the limitations for females, I believe. If you're not hitting those limitations, then you have more natural potential. Start looking at your training, start looking at your diet. There is no easy route to muscle gain, and there is no easy route to fat loss. It's consistency over a long period of time. So, as I said, you should be winning regional shows, you should be winning national shows, you should be placing highly at international events before you even start thinking about going down that route. And that's just my opinion on that. Other people will differ, other people will tell you, you should take this, you should take that. I don't ever tell anybody they should take anything. That's solely their decision, and once they've made that decision, then I can advise them on a road to go which is safe. So that's the natural limitations, really. And that's all the questions. I just wanted to touch on a couple of things while we do this video blog. There's been a couple of passings in the bodybuilding world in the last week or so. Dallas McCarver, 26 years old. A really, really sad state of affairs. 26 years old, the potential was endless for that young man. But unfortunately, people saw that coming. So Ronnie Coleman put something out and he said, I wasn't ever 333 pounds at 26 years old. And that is the greatest bodybuilder of all time. He said, I only ever got to that weight when he was in his late 30s, early 40s. 10 years older than what Dallas McCarver was. And that's from the greatest bodybuilder ever, the biggest bodybuilder ever, the most shredded bodybuilder ever. So it just shows that patience is really, really important. And I don't want to put the guy down. You know, he's passed away. He was a great bodybuilder. I never met him. But from everybody that I speak to, he was a true gentleman and a really, really nice, humble guy. But be patient about growing. You know, be patient about growing. Growing puts a lot of strain on your heart, on your health, on everything. So be patient, you know. As I said, Dallas was 330 something pound, you know, at the age of 26. Ronnie Coleman never got anywhere near that until his late 30s. As I said, that's putting in that comparison with the greatest bodybuilder of all time. So, you know, people who were rated as mass monsters, Dorian Yates, never even got over 300 pound. And he's 33 pounds heavier, 10 years younger. So be patient with your growing, guys. If you want to grow, be patient with it. Don't think more is better in terms of drugs. Don't think that, okay? Be patient with your growing. And the second passing was Rich Piana. Rich Piana wasn't my favourite bodybuilder by any means. But in terms of a businessman, he was absolutely brilliant. He put out a documentary once. It's still on YouTube probably. That saying how he dedicated a whole year to bodybuilding. He spent something like 30 grand on drugs, trainers, gym memberships, traveling across the country. Spent 30 grand, put his whole year worth of work into the bodybuilding scene, and he ended up placing 7th at the Nationals. Didn't even make the top 3. And that was his sign to get out of bodybuilding. He spent all this money on drugs, trainers, coaches, blah, 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 and ended up finishing 7th at the Nationals. But people call him a meathead, but he wasn't. He used his mind, he got out of bodybuilding, and he started making money, a lot of fucking money out of bodybuilding. You know, he created this massive cult, you know, the 5% cult, which will probably last forever now. You know, he created this massive cult, this massive culture, which people could buy into. Then he started selling supplements and made his own brand. And, you know, his brand hasn't been about for that long. You know, I remember the days he was with Mutant, and that wasn't that long ago. It was only 5 years ago. And within 5 years, his brand is probably one of the biggest selling brands in the world. When you go to expos, he has the longest queue every single expo. And I don't care who is there, he has the longest queue because he has such a massive following. So in terms of a businessman, he was incredibly successful. So massive, massive respect for that. And again, unfortunately, I don't even think he was 45 years old, and he has passed away again this week. So again, another guy, 300 plus pounds. So please be careful when you're growing, guys. Please be careful to do things steadily. Don't think bigger, 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 because your heart will fail on you. Your joints will fail on you. Things will fail on you because the body just isn't built to be that big. So yeah, bigger is great, but please be careful with your growing. Take it steady, take it controlled. Don't think more drugs is better. Again, guys, I will try and upload another video Q&A next Wednesday, so you can watch it during your cardio on Thursday. Any questions, just hit me up at leadingresults at TeamLRF on Instagram, or drop a comment below. Thanks, guys. Take care.